Hello and welcome to our first interview for the Leader Campus. And our first interviewee is Mr. Barrett Evans. He's the director of the Leadership Institute at Macy's. Thank you for allowing me to interview you, Mr. Evans.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So the first question I'd like to ask is, what do you think is the main advantage of having an institute in your in-house?
I'd wager that competitive advantage that we have in having an in-house institute is our ability to really connect with the business. So it's a combination of expertise that we gather from our vendor partners and other external resources, and we're able to really put that into language that our executives across our enterprise can appreciate. We are more than just a retailer. If you think that we're also a logistics company, a finance company, a merchandising company, even a real estate company. So there are many different languages that we speak across our organization, and we have the ability to take all of the information that we have and best practices on different leadership competencies and really translate that into action for our leaders in all of those different business functions.
So you have so many things to cover, it seems, within that area. What do you think is the most difficult thing to teach about leadership, dealing with all these different areas that you're talking about?
I would say that a commonality amongst all of those different groups that can be challenging to teach or to explain is actually a very simple concept, and it's what I would call leadership or executive presence. And it is a fine balance of helping leaders understand the impact that their actions and that their attitude have on results and on the team, and at the same time being able to effectively persuade and influence where appropriate. Leadership presence is hypercritical and at the same time perhaps not as much of a priority as it should be for aspiring leaders. It is not just something reserved for the most senior level, and it involves someone really taking the time to define what I would say is their leadership brand. For what do they want to be known? How will they go about achieving results in a sustainable fashion? How do they interact with their teams? How do they let their teams see them interacting with others? And how do they maintain this aura, if you will, of what is a great leader and how do I embody that? So leadership presence is something that is applicable in all areas of our organization, and I'd wager in many of the organizations of the folks in the Leader Campus group, and an increasingly difficult subject to tackle because it changes, and it is a very personal subject for those that we're teaching.
Do you think then, this is one question I didn't say in advance to you, but do you think then that you have to take into consideration aspects of personality in dealing with the leadership?
Self-awareness is a very large part of leadership or executive presence. So yes, I do think there's a very personal element associated with how someone carries themselves, what is intrinsic about them, how are they wired, and it is not about changing someone. It's about helping them understand what it is that they can do. What is the one thing that they can do different or even better than perhaps someone else, and how do they lean into that? And at the same time, acknowledge any blind spots they may have and deploy resources appropriately to cover those blind spots.
Okay. What type of support do you think you need to get from the top executives to really work on these people for leadership in the future?
There are a few different triangles in that game piece of what we need from senior leaders. One is certainly ongoing financial support, and we have an obligation to demonstrate a return on the investment that they make from the organization to show them what it is that we're able to deliver based on the leaders that participate in our programs. We also need support for the people coming in to be able to break away from their work and to really be able to focus on themselves and to see it as an opportunity to further develop their teams, in as much that when you're here participating in a program, you're able to empower your teams and see what they're capable of doing without you. And it gives you a great opportunity to focus on yourself and on your development, which pays dividends back to your team. And as our senior leaders recognize that and give either tacit or direct permission for you to break away, that's very important. And the last game piece, I think, is participation. being an active participant and making yourself available either in person or virtually to share your own experiences on relevant subject matter and open yourself up for questions to really connect with this group of high potential leaders. So I think it's the financial support, it's the participation support, and the last piece is really them being active in what it is that we're doing here with our leaders.
Now, how do you select people to get into the Institute? Is it just open to everyone, or is there a selection process of people designing it for certain people, just picking out, what they believe are going to be the future leaders of Macy's or,
Sure. There is a nomination process across the enterprise as we identify high potential talent, and we go through a process at the end of every year as we prepare for the next year's group of sessions, guiding our HR business partners through that process and identifying their high potential talent that would really benefit from participating in these programs. We then go through a registration process and ultimately build out rosters that across all forms of diversity, especially thinking about organizational diversity, so that we have a mixture of all of our different businesses that I referenced earlier in our conversation present, so that they're really learning from one another about what it is that each area of our company does and where they fit into this bigger picture of what it takes to be a successful omnichannel retailer.
Now, you had also mentioned that it was very important for them to be able to break away from the normal everyday situation in order to put their minds in, I guess you'd say, ready to be involved in the training itself. Is it better, do you think, to have off-campus programs, or is it okay to still be on campus? Which do you find better, if there is one?
Great question. We have a majority of our participants travel into our Cincinnati dual headquarter location, and so they are remote from their traditional workspace. At the same time, we have perhaps a third of our participants are local from our dual headquarter or other regional areas. And one thing that we attempt to do is encourage those participants, even if they're a short drive from home, to stay with the cohort that has traveled in for the week, so they can really experience some of the networking that occurs after hours and outside of the classroom. I don't necessarily, Mel, have a perspective on one being better than the other. I do think, though, that on campus, that is, if someone's not traveling in, it does require some greater attention to those details of how you truly immerse that person in stepping away from their workplace. Especially if they're not even leaving their own floor, how do we make it feel like something special or something different that will stand out to them as a moment in time where they'll really be able to recall their learnings as something different than their traditional workday?
What do you think is important as an aspect of any company that would like to start a leadership institute in their own company?
I'd start with asking myself why several times. And really understanding what is it that I'm trying to accomplish for my organization in creating some sort of academy or institute. Are there things that can be solved externally or with different resources? And certainly I'm an advocate for corporate universities or academies, but I think it's really important that you spend time thinking about the reason behind that desire. And also being prepared to make the investment in very high-touch experiences. We spend a lot of time managing pre-work and the logistics component. So this is not just people show up. We spend months building rosters and working out travel plans, planning events while people are here, coordinating schedules with senior leaders to come and interact with these folks, dealing with any last-minute changes, managing vendors who come in and either provide content or manage simulations. So there's a lot that goes into managing a successful corporate university or academy. And I think it really starts with understanding, what is it we're trying to solve for our organization? And this might be the answer, or perhaps a different modality may be the right way for them to go.
Well, our time is running out, so I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. This has been Mr. Barrett Evans, and he's the director of the Leadership Institute at Macy's. And I want to thank you once again for becoming our first person on the Leader Campus for the interview.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and take care.
Thanks.